Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first Books Beside My Bed video for 2020. Before I talk about the books, if you've been following me on Twitter, I've been talking and retweeting a whole bunch of things about the bushfires in Australia. I'm going to leave some links down below. Basically, a quarter of my country is currently on fire and it's not okay, and we have really dodgy leaders who think that creating ads at this time is useful rather than actually doing something. I'm going to leave some links down below to some places that if you have the capability to donate some money to the volunteer firefighters who have been fighting these fires now for months. This has been going on for months and months, and it's honestly, it's mind-boggling the stuff that's going on here. We've lost so many animals, but so many houses and properties and things like that. It's honestly heartbreaking. I'm fortunate enough to live in a part of my country where this is not currently an issue for me, but I know so many people affected by it and there's so much going on. So I'll leave a whole bunch of links and stuff down below. If you are able to donate, please do. Otherwise, just please keep people in Australia in your thoughts, because it's horrifying. And if I talk about it anymore, I'm either going to get upset or I'm going to get really political, and I don't really want to do either of those things. This is my first reading wrap up for the year. It encompasses the end of the year as well. So it's my reading wrap up from the 30th of December until the 4th of January. I read 8 books this week. I'm currently reading 2 extra books, which I'm not including in any of my stats. I read a total of 1,981 pages. My yearly reading total for 2019 was 381 books, and my current yearly reading total for 2020 is 5 books. I am very loosely participating in a bunch of readathons this month, including the Read Your Shelves, Get Shit Done readathons, the Smuttathon, which is taking place from the 4th until the 11th, I think. And I'm also participating in the Romanceopoly challenge as well, and that's a year-long challenge. Like I said, I'm loosely participating in all these readathons, so if I get things done, I do. If I don't, I don't, and I'm just sort of fitting things in as I'm reading them rather than trying to pick books to match different challenges, if that makes sense. The first book that I'm going to talk about this week is The Marvel Museum, The Story of the Comics. This was a review copy sent to me from Scholastic. It's a 2019 release. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It is designed for middle grade-ish age children, and it's ginormous for a start. But it is a really simple look at the history of the Marvel Comics since they were first created all the way up to sort of contemporary day. It does not include the films, but it does include a lot of the major characters. Format is quite simple for kids to read. There's usually a page or equivalent of a page of writing for each thing and a picture, and everything that takes place in that topic takes place over a double page spread, so it doesn't take up a lot of space. It includes a lot of facts. It's really short and concise and very easy to understand and get through. So I enjoyed this. I do have a review for it up on my blog, so I'll leave a link to that down below for you. Then I read Standing on a Book, Stories from Classrooms Around Australia. This is an anthology of stories written by students, and it was published by PETA here in Australia in 2019. My school is a member of PETA, so we get these books sent out to us as part of our subscription, and every term they have a new publication. This term it was a collection of stories by kids, and it was honestly delightful. They included 3 parts to this anthology. The first one was Identity and Belonging, so all stories dealing with that. There was a fun and fantasy section, and then there was a place and environment setting as well. So this was a really great read. It was very short and very easy to get through, and I'll be taking this back to work and giving this to my senior school teachers because they can definitely use these as examples of texts to read with kids, as examples of kids writing. And I'm pretty sure the stories were written by kids from year 4 to year 7 or 8. I don't know if there were year 8s in here, but there were definitely year 7 stories. So this was a great little collection. My last book for 2019 was actually a non-fiction book. It was a biography / memoir called The Unexpected Spy, written by Tracy Walder. The book is due to be released in 2020. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Tracy Walder was a former CIA officer, and it's the story of how she went from being a sorority girl at, I think it was UCLA, or one of the colleges in California, to a CIA officer. She then moved into the FBI, and then after facing a lot of sexism and discrimination in the FBI, she actually left the FBI as well and became a teacher. This was really fascinating because Tracy was an officer of the CIA during the September 11 attacks, so we actually get to see and hear about a lot of the things that were going on in her job. And what I know about the CIA and the FBI is pretty much from movies and TV. So it was an interesting perspective to have, especially from the perspective of a woman working in that field. Some things that may bother people about this particular book is that obviously because she's talking about quite sensitive things, her book had to be vetted by the CIA, and they chose to redact parts of her book, and she's chosen to leave the redacted parts in blacked out so that the integrity of the story stays the same, but we just don't have that information. I found it quite easy to fill in some of the blanks, so I didn't mind that so much, but it might bother other people. Honestly, it was just nice to read a biography of another strong female who was determined to make the world a better place. The CIA was Tracy's workplace, so what she was doing to stop terrorists, and I thought that was a really interesting way to look at the book as an outsider, as someone who is so far removed from Tracy's situation, it's not even funny. I really enjoyed it. It was really easy to read. I'm actually glad it was my last book of the year because I was really pleasantly surprised by it. I have a full review for this on my blog and I'll leave that link down below as well. Next we come to my 2020 books, and I have decided from now on that the first book of every year is going to be a reread of a favourite. This year I chose Starry Eyes by Jen Bennett because I adore this book. It is a 2018 YA contemporary book and I adore it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It is a friends to enemies to lovers sort of story, and it's just delightful. Zori is a very highly organized person. She likes everything to go according to plan, so she's sort of like my spirit animal. She had a falling out with a childhood friend, Lennon, and basically now their families are it's sort of a one-sided war between Zori's father and Lennon's mothers. They're both invited on a camping trip and they sort of have to deal with each other, but then something goes wrong and they're left to rely on one another to get through the camping trip. As it turns out, the two begin to talk and realize that perhaps the reason that they are no longer friends has more to do with the fact that they stopped talking and they didn't pay attention to what the other person was going through than for something as simple as, well, we just don't like each other anymore. And it was fun, it was delightful. This does border more on new adult. There is some sex on the page, but there is also a lot of really positive sex talk between the two main characters, and I think this is what YA really, really needs, especially at the upper end of YA. I love this book. It is a perfect summer read, and I will probably be rereading it again in the future. I also read this, which is A Teacher's Guide to Getting Started with Beginning Writers, Grades K to 2, or Foundation to 2, by Katie Wood Ray and Lisa Cleveland. This is a teaching reference book. It is all about one method of starting writing with young children. The good thing about this series of books, because I have a reading and a writing conferences book from the same line, is that they include a lot of video examples of everything that's going on in the book. So I actually get to see what the authors are talking about in practice in an actual classroom, and that was fantastic. This is something that I'm going to be adapting for my school, hopefully, and I got a lot of really great ideas in here. It's looking at developing a writer's workshop model for very, very young children who really don't know how to write yet, and just encouraging them to become writers, and I love that. I read The Weight of the Stars by Kay Ankrum, which was a 2019 release, I believe. I gave it 3 stars. This was a book club pick. I also read it for the Read Your Shelves Vacation Purchase Challenge because I bought it while I'm on holidays. It is a YA contemporary / speculative fiction female romance book that I honestly have very mixed feelings about. It follows Ryan, who is a very rough around the edges young woman. She lives with her brother and her brother's son. Her brother is younger than her and they're both raising this infant and their parents are deceased. Ryan is quite a tough cookie and she defends her family admirably, and I 100% love that about the book, that she's so devoted to her brother and her nephew. But when she goes to school, because they're all teens, when she goes to school she's sort of this leader of this ragtag group of kids who don't really fit in anywhere else. Then she's asked by a teacher who I think is, I have questions about the woman's motives. She's asked by this teacher to get Ryan to buddy up with a new student at the school who has sort of a past that she thinks Ryan can help with. Alexandria is the daughter of a woman who went into space 3 months after she was born, and so she's never known her mother. She was literally dropped off at her father's place and her mother is never coming home. Her mother is on a space journey that is going to go on until everyone in the crew dies. They're just traveling out in space. So that was interesting. But I think the thing that bothered me most about this book is the fact that there is literally like no adult presence in this book whatsoever. And I know it's a YA book, but there are things that these kids are doing that concern me greatly. And yeah, that was interesting. The story itself is told in short sort of microfiction bursts, which was fine because you get really short chapters and it's quite quick and easy to get through. But yeah, I just kept being pulled out of the story because I just didn't believe it at all. I also read Willa and the Whale by Chad Morris and Shelley Brown, which is a 2020 release, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is a middle grade book. I received it as an ARC from NetGalley. I read it for the Read Your Shelves challenge to read a book with a green cover. It's not strictly green, but it's the closest thing that I've got that I'm going to be reading this month, so I'm using it. It follows Willa, who is a 13-year-old girl who has just lost her mother. Her parents separated, I think 3 or 4 years before she turned 13. And so Willa has been living with her mother overseas in Japan for that time period. And then one day her mother just dies suddenly and Willa is sent back home to the United States to live with her father and her father's new family, her stepfamily. Willa's mother was a very renowned marine biologist and Willa is very similar in terms of her interests. She is very interested in marine life. She is very interested in learning. And obviously when she comes back to the States, we start the story about a month after her mother's death. She is quite traumatized by this event, but she doesn't realize that yet. And one day while she's out on a whale watching trip with her father, she is watching this beautiful humpback whale and then she starts talking to the whale and the whale starts talking back to her. So you have this really nice magical realism story sort of going through it. The entire book is about Willa coming to grips with her mother's death and her grief and her loss, and the whale, Meg, is sort of used as a way of driving that forward, and Meg offers quite a bit of advice and some really lovely stories that help Willa to understand her grief. And alongside that you have Willa reconnecting with not only her father and her friends from the town, but learning to accept her new family and to try and understand them. It was a beautiful little story. I enjoyed it. I think it will be an important book for people who have children who are dealing with loss and with grief. I have a full review for it on my blog, so I'll leave a link to that down below. Yeah, it was an enjoyable read. I'm glad I read it. The final book that I finished this week was Whiteout by Adriana Anders. This was another NetGalley ARC that I requested. It is another 2020 release and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It is a romantic suspense book. I read it for the Romanceopoly Challenge Winter, which was to read, I think, a book with either blue or white on the cover or to have a wintry title or something like that, so this fits. And I'm also including it for the Read Your Shelves challenge to read a book with a fantastic title. Whiteout just sounds really intriguing to me. It is the story of 2 characters, Angel Smith, who is a cook at an Antarctic outpost, and Ford Cooper, who is I think a glaciologist or someone who studies ice core samples. The two don't really get along. Angel is quite out there and gregarious and outgoing and loud, and Ford is an ex-army man who basically has come to Antarctica to escape people. He spends most of his time out on the ice because he doesn't want to deal with them. He struggles to deal with Angel. On the day that Angel is about to leave to return back to the mainland, she stumbles across a group of people who are trying to steal some ice core samples. In what follows, she is left by herself at this base, or so she thinks, when they take off, and they've taken everyone else from the base with her to cover up this theft. Ford, however, was out on the ice, so he's still there, and the two have to team up and basically make a massive 250-mile trek across the ice to a neighbouring base in order to escape the people who've taken the ice core samples. And it's harrowing and treacherous, and I love stories set in Antarctica. I don't know what it is about it. I love them. I think there is something about Antarctica that is just inherently dangerous because it is so cold, and if you get lost out there, you will probably not be found. And I think that I enjoyed that aspect of it so much. The romance was great. There was a lot of sexual tension between the 2 main characters. That was all fine, but I think I just like the fact that it was set in Antarctica more. The villains were cardboard cutouts, but I don't really care, to be perfectly honest. I enjoyed the story. Finally, the 2 books that I'm currently reading, I'm reading The Disasters by M.K. England. This is for the Galactic Grimoire Book Club, which I am one of the hosts for. We are talking about chapters 1 to 4 on the 5th of January. So I've read the first 4 chapters, but I'm hoping to finish the rest of the book, hopefully this weekend. And I'm also just over 50% of the way through Dark Lover by J.R. Ward, which I've been meaning to read for ages. I'm actually really enjoying it. This I will also be finishing, hopefully, before this video goes up. It doesn't look like much, but I actually read a lot this week. This is just because most of the books that I read were on my Kindle. In the comments below, let me know what you have been reading in the last week, the first week of the new year. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.